How much money do you need? Well, it's just not that easy to answer. You really have to go through and think, well, what's our lifestyle going to look like?
Yep.
Are we both going to work? How many kids do we have? What range home are we going to be in? And so these are the factors that have to come into play when you start making the decision about, how much money do I need to be making?
Yep. Strong Dads wants to thank Quality Auto Mart for joining us as a sponsor. Quality Auto Mart was born in 1985. They are owned and operated by Mark and Nancy Repke. Quality Auto Mart provides all the services, repairs, and maintenance for your vehicle's needs with a 3-year auto parts and labor warranty. They offer complimentary vehicle safety inspection and estimates. Also, they offer a shuttle service, and the 4th oil change is always on them. They are located at 7307 on State Road 46 in Batesville, Indiana. Make sure you give them a call at 812-934-2301. That's better.
Welcome to Strong Dads. This is Merle Hutchinson and Kyle Crawford bringing you another great show. Man, today we're going to a place that we probably have talked about quite a bit around the old dinner table sort of thing.
Yep.
We've never done a show on it.
Never. No, this is good. I'm excited / nervous, but this should be good. Yeah. So how you doing today?
I'm doing really good.
Good.
I'm getting my wrist finally fixed.
Good.
So, all summer I whined to you about I can't really play golf because of my wrist. So I'm going to lose my excuse a week from yesterday.
Hold on. Full transparency here, guys. Stick with me on this one, okay? Before we start every show, in order to get everything lined up with the audio and the visual here, we have to do a single clap, right? Just like you do the action, right? They do on the scene, right? So Merle he's let me take over the sole clapping here for Strong Dads because he can't. His wrist really hurts. It's really sore. He's told me, and I think, quote, if I do, I won't be able to move it tomorrow.
Oh, geez. Well, I think he's playing up a little bit. But the other side of that is since he used to be a great clapper. Since he's taken it over, you just really suck.
It's been subpar performance.
I used to give him A+, and now I'm like, what? That sounded like something I would do.
Well, you know what? Tying it right into the show, if you would give me a pay raise,
oh my gosh,
I would learn to clap better.
Wow.
There we
go.
See?
There you go.
Tied it right in.
It all comes back to money, doesn't it? Everything
does.
with you comes back to money. That's good. All right. So we are going to talk about money.
We are.
We're going to talk about money. And you and I are not going to be financial advisors or planners or anything on this. What we're going to talk about is money. How much money should we make? Money seems to be a topic that many men go to in their conversations with other men. Yeah. So, well, what are they paying you? Well, what kind of money are you making there? Hey, could you make better money here? So it seems to be a really common topic. And I will say that I have been sheltered from the money conversation through a lot of my career because I was on a very fixed money resource. When you work for schools and government, entities, there's
one pot.
Everybody knows what you make. It's all public, knowledge. And so it's like, well, you're a 5th-year teacher. Okay, you're going to make $35,000 a year or whatever it is,
Yep.
And so everybody knows that, and arguing or complaining about it doesn't do a whole lot. So, but I know that money is a driver in a lot of our decisions about whether we should stay at a place or we should go to another place or just how we're going to live our lifestyle. So we're going to go down that road a little bit today to figure out, well, as a strong dad, as a Christian strong dad, how should we govern some of that thinking process?
Yeah.
What are some things we should throw in there?
Yep. Yeah, it'll be a good conversation. It's one of those, especially as a believer, it's just like the idea of money, you don't want to say it's a driving force or it's a deciding factor, but at the end of the day, there's no way around it. It's going to be a part. So we might as well start talking about it.
Yeah. Okay, so the question.
Oh, boy.
You make enough money? On the hot spot.
You know, Merle, you asked. I was thinking about this. You asked some very thought-provoking questions around here.
Well, you always get the opportunity to flip it back on me, so that's why I don't feel too guilty about it. Because you always can come back around and say, "How about you?"
Now, this idea of how do I make enough money? And I was sharing with this a little bit before we hit the record button. This is a really odd question to me because I remember being at Cincinnati State, getting my certifications, getting my degree in fire science. I remember this idea of how much you're going to make in the fire service. I remember this conversation very vividly coming up, and my instructors and professors would be like, if you're in the fire service to make a lot of money, don't do this. You're in it for the wrong reason, right? This is not why you get into the fire service. And I kind of always like, okay, I can get on board with that, right? The idea of service and sacrifice, that those should be why you get into the fire service, right? And then it's like I got into the fire service. I got into the firehouse. And Merle, when I tell you it's a daily conversation, I'm telling you it is a daily conversation. Every day in the firehouse, the idea of how much we make and wanting to make more and with the next contract when we got to negotiate, what that's going to look like. And it is just a daily conversation, right, wrong, or indifferent, right? But it's just crazy to think that, I didn't get into this for the money, but again, similar to what I said before, it is the nature of the beast. I'm not going to work for free. Right? I do this because it provides for my family. So, the idea of do I make enough money? Sure, I do just fine. I'm able to support my family. Jenny does work, so that also, having a 2-income household. We do have kids, which we'll get into this whole idea. So I do make enough. Would I like to make more? Sure, especially when you see the NFL, the big, massive contracts. Joe Burrow's getting these.
Holy smokes.
And it's just like, do I think I deserve that much? No, but I think my job warrants a decent salary. I don't know.
Yeah. I guess what's the definition of a decent salary anymore?
That's true, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it does go back to the idea of, you can never make enough, right? It's like your shop that you built is never big enough.
It's not.
Your garage is never big enough.
I need a bigger shop. Babe.
Yeah. Your current set of golf clubs are never quite the right set.
Yep.
So it's always that striving for a little something more, which is the human nature. And so trying to govern the human nature of being content wherever you are, what level you are, like how do I balance that? And so that's where we're going today. Okay.
What about you? Obviously, I know you and Linda jumped into the nonprofit world. So what does that look like? Do you make enough money?
By myself, no.
Yeah.
No, by myself, I don't make enough money.
You're saying to support your family, right?
Right. Like if Linda didn't work, no, wouldn't even come close. But that's always been the case. I mean, when our boys were younger, our 2 oldest, they were younger, we went through that time of, man, the house was chaotic. Linda was working, I was working, and we said, hey, it's time that we put our priorities different and right. And so she stopped working, and we were like, man, are we going to be able to cover this?
Yeah.
And we did. We off of one salary, we covered it. We didn't have to make crazy significant changes. That was the thing that shocked both of us. We literally said, hey, if we really think this is the right thing, God's going to provide. And I know that sounds cliche, but it worked. It worked. We didn't really miss a beat. We were so much more aware, though, of how we were going to spend our money. And I will tell you that we are so much more sloppy with how we spend money because of it's more fluid and, it comes and goes. Yeah. So anyway, like by myself with our current lifestyle, no, I don't make enough. One benefit is that Linda has always desired to work.
Right.
She's always desired. She's never been content like with just staying home, and that's fine. So because of that, she's never said like, oh, I would do anything to not have to work. If she felt that way, then we would be redoing things.
Sure. Yeah. I think it'll be a good conversation we get in this. Hopefully, you guys are kind of your interest is piqued here, and we'll get into it here. Before we do, let's thank our sponsors, Strong Dads. We would love to thank Quality Auto Mart for coming alongside of us. Awesome facility. Check out what Mark and Nancy Repke started and kind of have passed the torch now.
To Fred.
That's right. So awesome facility. Check them out. Let them know we sent you up there.
All right. We want to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions. Excuse my voice. We want to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions for being a sponsor of Strong Dads. And so for all your outdoor needs, landscaping, or just dressing up the home a bit, especially as we are in the fall season right now, lots of mums and things like that going on, go check out Casey's, located right outside of Lawrenceburg, Indiana on State Line Road.
Yep. Good deal. Yeah, as you had said before, and I think it's worth saying again, we are not going to sit here and profess to be, the Dave Ramseys of the world, right? That's not what I think the purpose of this show is. But I think at the end of the day, as strong dads, I think that this conversation has to come up. I'm sure it's a topic of conversation between you and your spouse, and so I think we would be kind of naive or remiss to not talk about this. Again, similar to what you said, we up to this point, we've really not done a whole show on the idea of finances and what that looks like and how much is enough and what that looks like to support your family. So we'll get into it again. Not financial advisor by any stretch of the imagination, but again, it's a topic you're having at home, I'm sure. So let's have it here.
So let's. I'm going to include this link in on the notes, and so we're going to access this link here for some of our discussion. But this link was really intriguing to me.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever saw something that just all in one place put together some different resources of what it's going to take to survive with 1 kid, 2 kids, 3 kids, mom and dad both work. So pretty cool. So it's from the people at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology.
Those are the smart people, right?
Yeah, they're smarter than you and I, that's for sure. Okay, and so the site is called Living Wage. Living Wage. Okay. And so I'm going to include this in, and it's really just kind of cool to take a look at. What's also cool is you locate your state that you live in, and then you locate the county within your state.
Oh, yeah.
And it'll give you a much more specific breakdown of cost of living, what people need to make in that area. Okay.
Yeah.
And so just for the sake of our conversation, we happen to be in Indiana, in Dearborn County. And so we're just going to reference, let's just have some conversation about some of these things, okay? I think some of it, at the time that they wrote this, they put the minimum wage of $7.25 an hour,
Wow.
okay? And I think this was like 2019 is where this came from, okay? It talks about the idea of, it breaks things down into hourly wage, just so that you can kind of wrap your head around that, okay? So just a few things. If you are a single adult, so you're a single adult and you're raising just 1 kid, okay, 1 kid, you are going to have to make about $33 an hour.
Yeah.
$33 an hour just to cover the expenses in Dearborn County, all right?
Now, do you? One of the questions, obviously, I think, and we'll get into this, but the discussion could be had about, what type of lifestyle are you also living? Because if you have a very modest house, and again, I know that these are using data points that I'm sure they've gathered, but I would think, $33 an hour sounds like a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
Especially by yourself, golly, I'd take that, right?
Yeah, with just 1 kid.
Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, I think obviously they're bringing the data points of what it's going to cost to raise a kid. But I think again, it could be considered somewhat relative because again, based off of the type of lifestyle that you do have.
Yeah, think about this. So that's 1 kid. Let's jump up to 3 kids. If you have 3 kids,
and you're living by yourself with a single,
yes, you're single, like maybe a single mom or something.
Yeah.
Okay. In order to, and when we talk about the what kind of money we have to make, this is based off of the average lifestyle. Okay, the average median home cost, grocery cost, medical cost, insurance cost. So it's kind of the average for that area. All right.
Yeah, yep.
So it doesn't mean that if you don't make this amount that you're not going to have some place to live.
Right.
But you're not going to be living anywhere close to the average. Okay.
Sure.
And so if you had 3 kids, you need to make almost $55 an hour.
Wow.
Now that is getting tougher to come by.
Yeah.
Right? You firemen might make that, but us teachers, we never did.
No.
Yeah. So that's a pretty big deal. If you have 3 kids, and you're a single parent, if you make around $13.50 an hour, you are going to be in the poverty range.
Wow.
In other words, that means you're going to have to get assistance to find any level of housing, food support, medical, that kind of thing. So think about that, when you see somebody, especially, you see a single mom who's out there and maybe she's in a divorce situation and maybe she was just an assistant at, a store or a medical center or whatever, and she might have been making $12, $13. And now she's having to survive on that. Right away, her world just changed big time.
Well, and I think what this really, in my eyes, what this really does prove, and again, I feel like my generation, this is kind of a known fact for us, that in a lot of ways, it takes two people working in a house to raise a family, because based off of this chart that we're looking at, again, just what you said, one adult raising 3 kids, you're around $54.36 an hour is what they need to make. Right. If you jump up to having 2 people working, again with the same 3 kids, it drops down to $27.50 an hour.
Yeah,
I mean, so almost half of what you need to make. And it's just, obviously, again, having 2 people, and I think it just, again, proves that idea. And it's something that I feel like my generation really knows very well, that nowadays it takes 2 incomes. Can it be done with single? Absolutely. And I'm sure I'm sure there's people listening to this that you can confirm that it can be done. But I think it just really proves that having 2 incomes is much more easy to obtain that 27, almost 20, $28 an hour.
Yeah, because if you're both working, that's your hourly wage per each working person. So 27 exactly. And 27 is 54.
Yep.
So that's how that gets covered. That's where Linda and I would have been, right? With very steady, we know what we're going to make. This is the hourly wage. And so 2 of us combined, we can make whatever that number needs to be. Okay. I think something that's kind of interesting is just when if you have 2 adults, but just one of them working,
right,
how much less that you have to make per hour.
Yeah.
You only need to make about $41 an hour for the one who's working.
With the same 3 kids.
With the same 3 kids.
Yep.
And that is due to childcare.
Yep.
Yeah. As soon as you throw childcare in, you got to bump in about $13 more into the monthly in order for you to make it. So $13 a month, $13 per hour is what needs to come in to start covering the childcare expenses, which is kind of interesting.
It's crazy.
$13 an hour if you're taking care of 3 kids is what it's going to take, is what the average cost of childcare for them.
Yep.
Pretty crazy.
And I'm sure any of you guys out there that have been like me, and I'm sure you can attest to this too, Merle, which is partially when you were talking about with when you and Linda were both in the school. Man, childcare sucks trying to find people. Man. It has been truly, now it's a little bit easier with the girls being in school full time, but it has truly been one of the biggest stressors for us, is trying to figure out day-to-day operations. With my job, I'm gone for 24 hours. Trying to get childcare is sometimes can be a nightmare, as I'm sure some of you moms out there, realistically more than probably most men. But I mean, golly, it is difficult to get the childcare part of it down.
Yeah, I think the idea here of you getting set in your mind what you think is a good number, and you see this a lot of times with young guys. Maybe they find out they're going to be able to get this job, and they find out, hey, I'm going to make $20 an hour. Yeah. And $20 an hour for a guy who's just come out of his home, his parents' home, and he's out working, well, he might feel like he's in, an old phrase, high cotton, right?
I've never heard that.
Yeah. So he might think, man, things are really good here.
Yeah.
But $20 an hour is going to be like diddly squat to taking care of other people and yourself.
Yeah.
And so that's when we ask the question, how much money do you need? Well, it's just not that easy to answer. You really have to go through and think, well, what's our lifestyle going to look like?
Yep.
Are we both going to work? How many kids do we have? What range home are we going to be in? And so these are the factors that have to come into play when you start making the decision about, how much money do I need to be making?
Yep. Yeah, so let's get into this conversation. Let's really kind of dive into really the meat and potatoes of what we want to talk about. This idea, again, not an easy topic of conversation to be had, but again, you guys are having them. We know you are, because I know I am. About what it looks like, how much wage, how much we're going to be making. So I think a great place to start is to understand that, generally speaking, this is not covering everybody, but generally speaking, men are called to be the provider, right?
Right.
And again, that looks different. I think right away, I think the idea of providing, I think we automatically jump to the financial piece. There's obviously a lot more provision that can come along with that. I think God calls men into be providers. So I think we should talk about the financial piece, the part of that, and I think, I'm not a woman, nor would I ever claim to be one. I'd imagine most women,
questionable.
Can't say that in 2023.
Yeah, I know.
Most women want to be provided for.
Yeah.
And I think that it is our responsibility as men to jump into that and that idea of security that comes along with, especially when it comes to the financial piece. I think this is something that is a needed want, that women want to feel that security.
Well, let me address that really. So when you start talking about the idea of how much money should I make, first and foremost, if a man doesn't recognize the one most important need that a woman has, all right? Now, it's a bit of a general statement, but not so much. I mean, this across the board, I can get this when I'm in session, that this is something that's screaming out to me in sessions with couples. The number one need is her need for security of the nest, security of the family, like all things. And you use the word provided for or whatever. Like you might run into some women, I don't need a man to take care of me. No, but a woman wants to know that her whole world is as secure as possible. It's going to be protected from the elements, from the enemies, from whatever could intrude. And so as a man, if I don't recognize that that is her need, and I have been brought into her world to help fulfill and cover that security need, right off the bat, I am starting wrong.
Yeah.
And so that's why when we run into guys who, barring medical reasons, can be perfectly content with sitting on the couch, unemployment, minimal jobs, minimal money bringing in. Right away, as men, we should be questioning, like, okay, where did you go off track, dude?
Sure.
It's intrinsically set into your wife to need security. It is intrinsically set into us as men to be the provider of that security, or a main facilitator of getting it. And so I just think that's so important, because once I recognize that it's not about the truck that I really want to save money for, that it's not about my toys, which, by the way, we all have those things.
Yep.
But when I back up and say the very first thing I want to make sure I get covered is the security need that my wife, and then trickling down into my kids and family, that has got to be covered first and foremost. Then we can start talking about other things.
Right. Yeah, and I think before we decide, that question of how much money do I need to make, man, I think this is a topic of conversation that has to be brought up, because, whether that's with your spouse or whether that's just you looking at your own personal bank account, man, there has to be an establishment of goals and visions that you want for your life. Like what type of life do you want to provide for your family? Are you the type of person that you grew up with very little, and you want to be able to provide, actual, like, tangible items to your family? And if so, then that has to be factored into the goals that you're making for the future. If you're trying to set your kids up for the future, so you're looking at college, so let's invest into college. So I know that I want to invest XYZ amount of money. So in order to do that and still be able to provide day-to-day stuff, food and shelter and all that other stuff, I have to know that I have to make a certain amount. So I think when we start to jump into this conversation about how much money do I need to make, there has to be a realization that, first and foremost, if you do have a spouse, they need to be brought in this conversation. You need to establish goals, but there has to be an overarching vision that you want for your family. There has to be, you need to know, like, this is something Jenny and I, we talk almost on a monthly basis about our finances. Like, we have a driving force to pay our house off. This is something we are trying to become debt free, right? And one of the major debts that we have is our house. So we have made it an actual tangible, like, thing we can touch. Like, we know that in 13 years our house can be paid off. This is something we're driving towards. But in order to do that, we had to give up some other stuff, right? So I think when you're making your vision for what you want, and you're financially speaking, man, it has to be based off of what type of living do you want to do? Yeah,
as you said before, I think one of the greatest conflicts that I see in couples is when they don't come together and agree on what that vision looks like. If he has one vision and she has another, now we're going to be in conflict. But if we can come together and say, hey, can we make an agreement that we would like to be debt free or have our house paid off in this amount of time or whatever? Now the two of you are a unified force.
Yeah.
And so it's so important that we come together. This also gets back to the idea of when we deal with our finances, the research shows that couples that run out of separate accounts, his accounts and her accounts, will find greater conflict in the marriage because it starts to create a mistrust within the relationship.
Sure.
All right. And so because there's not a full level of transparency there. I don't quite know what you're doing with your money. It seems like you've been buying a lot of golf clubs lately while I'm over
Right.
here buying diapers,
Yeah.
And so that whole thing starts a disruption in the common vision. So it's really important you come together and you say, hey, what do we want 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year down the road? So,
Are you seeing that in your office?
all the time.
Really?
All the time. And almost there's a sense of pride, like, well, she has her money and I have my money. And I'm like, okay, well, how's it working? And it almost always trickles back into a mistrust that is coming in between them because, it doesn't always work out that money's being spent the way the other one agrees with.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I noticed you're going on another golf trip, or I noticed that I got a new Amazon package every day on the front porch, and you start to doubt and question each other. And so these are things that, man, we want to work to get on the same page with. Otherwise, Satan's going to drive a wedge between us.
Yeah, I mean, as we're talking about this, man, my mind's just kind of running and just thinking about the conversations Jenny and I have had. And one of the things we talk a lot about is what do we want our girls to experience? And what does that look like? And this is something that we, financially speaking, we're trying to set money aside to be able to make memories, whether that be family vacations. We're talking about making, significant family vacations, and we want to go travel a little bit with our girls and let them experience that. So I think, man, you have to start looking at, what is important to your family. For us, I've said it before on this show that if you want to know what Jenny and I are about, you look at our bank account and our schedule. I think, financial goals that you're setting are great, but like, do they fit in line with your family values? I know that for us, tithing is really important to us. I want to make sure that is a part of what we're doing and the goals that we're setting for our financial, for our bank account. I want to make sure that you see that in my bank account, that we do tithe, that we are setting money aside for our girls' college, because I want to set them up. That's a vision that Jenny and I have, that goal that we have set. We want to make sure we're setting our girls up for success in the future, because again, I'm sure some of you guys out there, and if you have kids, are experiencing what student loans can do and how detrimental they can be, and the unforgivable loan, right? That's the student loans, and just how that can really set yourself up and set your kids for almost setting them up for failure. So again, I think there has to be a lot of conversation about what is truly important to your family, and your financial goals should reflect that.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting thing that you bring up, because here's another thing that I've run into many times in our work, and that is it's usually a man situation. I guess it could be the other way. I just typically see it with men. Men start to they have the desire to contribute to the family, okay? And they'll want to contribute to the family out of their strengths, like whatever they seem to be good at. Okay, I'll just double down and I'll do what I'm good at. And for many of them, they do want to provide, but they might struggle with social interaction in the family, playing with the kids, being around the home. And so I will have guys that come in and say, I don't get it. Like, my kids and my wife have everything. We've got the nicest house. Yeah. We've got the cars. Our kids are on all these teams. And then you got the wife over there going, we haven't seen you. You're never home. And so these are the conversations we want to have sooner rather than later. They're like, okay, so how much money is it worth that we're going to only see Dad, 10 hours a week, including the weekend or whatever, So these are things that guys will be like, oh, man, I'm doing my job. I'm providing. Well,
at what cost?
Yeah, and provision needs to be defined. Yeah. We don't just provide money. We provide a lot of other things.
Yep. Yeah, I think that brings up a great point, that it's just like, if your family goals require as most financial obligations require a lot of your time. If you're not able to be the strong dad that you're called to be, again, maybe your family values and the goals you're setting are maybe too lofty. I mean, it's just like, okay, instead of me working, those 15 overtimes in the last month, maybe I need to give up my morning Starbucks coffee every morning. Again, going back to what are your family values? If you value having stuff in your house, right, then working all those hours may fit in, or maybe a short plan that you're going to have, but how's it going to work out long term? Because again, if you're in order to give up time, you're giving up your time with your kids.
Yeah. Well, that leads me to one of the things that we frequently see is how if our kids aren't taught to value the things that are important to family, they will default to valuing things that are important to them. In other words, selfishness.
Yep.
Yeah. And so this is where you'll all of a sudden have the kid who's whining and crying and complaining because they want the $200 pair of shoes. And the parent who is about the providing says, well, okay, that's fine, but that means I'm going to have to work 4 extra hours just to pay for your $200 pair of shoes. And by the way, we have 3 other kids, and they also want those. And so the next thing you know, we are snowballing really the debt that I'm going to have to cover because I am feeding my kids' selfishness. And so here's where we come in and go, no, I need to provide for my kids, but what is the difference between the essentials versus the extravagant, and what's that costing my family?
Yeah.
Would a $40 pair of shoes do the same function? And not apologizing to your kids that, hey, you got shoes, dude. No, but because of that, I'm able to be home in the evenings and rather than picking up side work.
Yep, I like it. Yeah, Merle, this was crazy to me because, again, as I'm going to get ready to say it, I think the question really has to be asked again with you and your spouse. Like, what does God really desire for our money? Like, what does He want from our finances, for our finances in that conversation? And I knew it was a lot. I didn't know it was to this extent that you had kind of written down that there's over 2,000 verses in the Bible that talk about managing money and talk about your finances and talk about all things provision when it comes to the finances. That is crazy to me. To know, again, because I think the idea of how much money should I make is not an easy conversation to have, but God was having them. God has them
constantly.
Right? And it's like, okay, so if you're to invite God in all parts of your marriage, all parts of your life, He's got to be a part of the conversation when it comes to the finances as well.
Yeah, because security, as we talked about before, is one of the major essential needs that people have. And money is a way that you can buy security. Okay,
Sure.
Everything from a security system to just the well-being of your family. And so that idea that people can put money as their God, because if I have enough money, that means I'm going to be able to cover the security. So it then becomes all about the money that we make. And so this is, there are so many verses, like we said, over 2,000 references, but we've heard some of these. One of the Ecclesiastes 5:10 says, whoever loves money never has enough. Man, that's like my garage is never big enough. I never have enough tools. Once I start falling in love with the idea of having to have it, it becomes my sort of artificial security blanket.
So good. Yeah. I just think it's very telling to me to know that it's very telling to me that God knew who we are and who we were going to be, because He wrote about this constantly throughout Scripture. And it's just got to be that constant reminder that it is a conversation that He wants to have with us. If our relationship with God, like we're asking the questions, and He's clearly telling us things that we need to hear. Like you look through all these verses, and it's like how relevant are they today? In a world that is all about actually holding tangible things. It's like God talked all about how not allowing money to be your God and not worshiping money, and you can either worship God or you can worship money. You can't have it both ways, right? And I just think there's so much value in taking that and using that as our fuel to let's talk about our finances. Let's talk about with our spouse to build up those visions, to make sure that our family values are built in who God is and who God wants, what He wants for us.
Yeah, Americans, because we have been blessed financially in so many ways, more so than most any other country, we have been able to get low-hanging fruit addictions to a lot of things.
Sure.
We're addicted to food. We're addicted to entertainment.
Yep.
We're addicted to money. And so when we say addicted, it means like, man, I can't live without it. I crave it. And so the same thing comes, all of those, food, entertainment, money, those become our gods. Even though we say we're Christian and everything else, they become the thing that we start living for, and they start to take us over, because when we have an amount, we feel good. And when we start to get less than that amount, we get nervous. Our security starts to leave us, right? The addiction, the withdrawal, so to speak, starts to kick in. So we really have to put money in its proper place. We talk about the idea that the love of money is the root of all evil. Not money,
right?
It's the love of food that is evil, not food, right? It's the love of it. So we have to be really careful. Like, how am I making decisions about my money and how much money I should make? Am I falling into that addiction thing, or am I doing it as an essential need to just cover my bases?
Yep. Yeah. Part of, I was just thinking, part of the idea of building that vision statement for Jenny and I, one of our visions that we have is we want to be able to provide long-term for our kids. And I think, Scripture in Proverbs, it talks about, it is wise to store wealth. It talks about in Timothy, like provide for your household. Like, I think there's so much value in this idea of I've heard different breakdowns as far as how much, you should, again, tithe 10%. You should have this much, stored up, whether it's 6 months of expenses. But I think there's so much good that comes from, storing up wealth, again, because I hear guys all the time at work be like, spend it while you're here, boy. Like I'm just gonna go spend my money on the things I want now. But again, going back to that vision and the goals that you have for your family, like part of the goals has to be long-term wealth for your family.
It's good. That's good. All right, so here's a challenge. We're gonna wrap things up. Our challenge this week, guys: settle down and have some conversation with your spouse. What kind of vision can you come together on and create? I don't care what my vision is or Kyle's vision is, because it's not necessarily relevant to you.
Right.
All right. The idea here is, what do the two of you want? And let's stop guessing or letting one dominate over the other. The two of you form, what do we want in our life? What kind of security needs to be met? What kind of physical needs need to be met? All these different things. And then sort of reverse engineer it in terms of, okay, so it looks like we're going to need this much money. Okay, then how are we going to cover that? Like, what kind of jobs? Do we both need to work? Maybe I can go to a part-time job. Maybe I should get a different job. But it allows me to reverse engineer it to help me establish what the basic need is, so that we can keep our priorities right. So that is your challenge this week.
I like it. Yeah. Thanks so much for Quality Auto Mart and Case Outdoor Solutions for coming alongside of us. Guys, we've mentioned this entire month so far, the exciting news of kind of moving and transitioning Strong Dads. We're going to do Strong Dads, doing real life. And we're excited about the new adventure of kind of jumping into that. We're going to come to you guys. We're going to, start doing interviews on where you guys are at, what, the jobs you're taking and how you're bringing in, a Christ-centered focus into your work and why you do what you do to provide for your family. All those things, all those questions are going to be asked. And again, if that's something you're interested in reaching out to us, we would love come talk to you about that. We would love to turn on the recorder button and kind of, have that conversation, because again, these are just real conversations we want to have with real men.
Yeah, I want to say to that, like, don't worry if you're not a perfect man, a perfect dad. We're just looking for guys who are eager to be strong and being a dad and being a husband. So I've got multiple guys that have reached out and said, yeah, this is really cool. And a lot of them have said, like, man, I don't know. I don't know if I'm like, dude, do you know Kyle and I? Do you know the fumbles and stumbles that we have? And so the idea here is, no, like, that's why we actually want you guys, because this is part of the wrestling match that we had with Satan and with life. And no one that is going to be on this show is going to come close to perfect. We're all going to have our wrestling matches. And so if you feel like you've got a good story, or you just have a heart to say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do, well, we want to talk to you. So reach out to us. You can get us at Hutch at rocksolidfamilies.org, or you can call our office at Rock Solid Families, which is 812-576-7625. I think that's about all.
It's not, because I
No.
think we need to discuss my raise that you're going to give. I'm just kidding.
Well, checks in the mail.
Okay, checks
in the mail.
Awesome. Yeah, you guys go out there and be some strong dads. Have a good week.
Casey's is a premier garden center and gift shop located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Casey's offers a wide selection of plants, landscaping materials, home and garden decor, and gifts for every occasion. Casey's is committed to providing exceptional service, a unique shopping experience, and value to every customer. Stop in and see what makes Casey's so unique. Located at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana, or call 812-537-3800. Let Casey's help you add beauty to your home.